visited my family was in the summer of 2019, and so it's like almost 3 years ago. And next year, due to the studies that I'm doing, I also wouldn't be able to fly back. So the earliest time that I will go back to China would be in the first 2-3 months of 2024, and I was just overcome by this sadness that there's nothing much I could do to change this. So I didn't sleep that well yesterday, and I actually just did my makeup so that it would motivate me more to study. However, I want to make this video first to talk about, like I said, my family. So I guess I would start with the dad side of my family, because there is less to talk about on that front, and then I will talk about my mom's side of the family. So on my dad's side, my dad is the middle child of five, not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 children. And my grandparents both passed away, so they were farmers, and I don't have a lot of memories of them, sadly, because they lived far away from us, far away. China is so big, so it's not that far away. We were still in the same province, but I have my early childhood memories of them is that it was super hard to go back to the village that my dad grew up in, because the infrastructure was so bad, and there was no direct train or bus to go there, so we always have to rent a type of SUV and go there, because there were some roads that are not even really properly done, so it's really hard to drive. Anyways, my grandpa, so my dad's dad, passed away when I was in the 2nd grade. So he got I think he got cancer, a type of GI tract cancer, but because in the rural area of China there was no screening for cancers, at least back then there was nothing like that. So when we discovered that, it was already too late. So I was very, very sad that I couldn't see him when he passed. He was a really kind man, and although they lived so far away, I have a very cool picture of him and my grandma. I sat on his lap when I was a baby, or 1 or 2 years old, in front of their house. So their house was a very typical farmhouse in China, I guess. There were 7 rooms inside, but they built the house all by themselves, and it sounds fancy that there were 7 rooms inside, but it's really very basic, and but still there was this this picture of me sitting on his lap. And with my grandma, I have a little bit more memory because she passed away when I was in 9th grade. So, there was this one summer holiday that I spent completely at her place. I think it was also a summer holiday when I was in elementary school, and there was just, a very small TV, and there was like no real internet. And the funny thing is, in China there is this official language, it's Mandarin, right? So Mandarin is what we learn at school, and it's like the only Chinese I can speak. However, there are many dialects. Very often you go from one village to the neighboring village, and it's already hard to understand what they are talking about. And also, a bit of another story is that when I first came to Germany, I was staying in a boarding school, and we had a lot of classmates. Some of them are from Shanghai, and whenever they want to talk about something and they don't want to let other people understand, they would talk in Shanghainese dialect. And anyways, so the point being, in the village that my dad was from, they also speak a type of dialect that for some reason I could understand, but I could never say it. So my grandma used to make fun of me that I can't speak properly, not in a mean way, but just, making fun of me. And I was always provocated, and I would say that no, the language you're speaking is not standard Chinese. And yeah, it was just very fun to visit her in the countryside, because I don't know, it's so different, and they had a lot of animals. And before my grandpa passed away, they had pigs, but that was too much work when he passed. So then they didn't have pigs, but they still have chickens, and it was so much fun to feed the chickens for some reasons. And because my mom is borderline OCD, and she doesn't like any animals with feathers or with fell, so I never really had dogs or cats, but every time when I was visiting my grandma, I always asked her to give me 2 chickens or something to take back home to, as a pet, which is, thinking back, maybe very cruel to the animals to let them from living freely on a farm to live in our balcony. But I was a child, so I wasn't thinking that much. And my dad had 2 sisters. One of them sadly passed away, and he had 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers. And my dad was the first person in the whole village to actually go to university. And so my dad is a very smart person, I would say. He was never very ambitious, but in terms of academic or going to university and stuff, he never had to give a lot of effort, and he just made it, which was super hard back then. Nowadays, a lot of people, I don't know the exact statistic, but a lot of people go to college. But back in his days, and even earlier in my grandparents' generation, it was really rare to go to uni. And there was this saying after Cultural Revolution, if you want to go to a university, it was like 1,000 people want to cross a bridge that's made of, one tree trunk, so it's really hard. But my dad did that, and so that's why he also moved from the village to a big city that I grew up in, and my grandparents never were able to give my dad much support in terms of helping him with his studies, because I don't think they went to school at all. At the time when my dad grew up, he told me that they would have like young people who finished 8th or 9th grade to teach them in the 1st or 2nd grade, so that even their teachers didn't really finish college or didn't even finish high school. That was the situation back then. So my grandparents didn't have the chance to study at all, but they were both very hardworking farmers, and I can imagine it was super hard for them to raise 5 children. But my dad said that because my grandparents always had to work, he was basically brought up by his second eldest sister. So that was also the aunt that sadly passed away because of cancer at a very young age. Like, she had a very hard life because her husband wanted to have a son, but I think she gave birth to at least 5 daughters first, and then the last child they got together was a son. But it was just so very sad, the thought on itself that girls are not really welcomed, and but thank God my dad was never like that, which is something that is pretty cool and rare for his generation, also because of his background coming from a rural area. Like, in rural area, this type of thinking was still very prevalent, that a family needs a son to kind of keep the family name going. But like, my dad was never like that. Actually, when I was born, like, my mom had a C-section, but my dad was just so excited to see me. He actually held me and ran around the hospital to tell everybody, this is my daughter, this is my newborn daughter, which was super cute. But like, my other grandpa, my mom's dad, was like, what the hell, you should, sit by your wife's side. But he eventually did, but he did this running around the hospital thing first, which is hilarious. So anyways, as I said, my dad went to a very good university to study IT. Back then, he was, I think, born in 1967 or 66, sometime around that time. So when he was in college, it was, the mid of 1980s. And so it was at the very beginning of all the IT things, I'd say. But sadly, it was not really something that my dad wanted to study. He actually wanted to study agriculture and go back to the countryside to do farming. But back then, it was like, based on what the country needs at the moment. So apparently, like for our city, they needed a lot of engineers back then, so that they made my dad to study informatics, to study IT, which is so funny because like my dad was admittedly never too good at it, and he also didn't really using his background in IT for his later work. I mean, I still think it's pretty hard to explain what he does, but he now works in like Chinese-German joint venture, like a very big chemical company, I would say that much. And yeah, he was also never very ambitious, as I said, which was, I think, very hard at the beginning of the marriage for my mom, because I don't know if it is a thing everywhere in the world, but I would say it's less so in Europe. But in China, women are still compared to each other, not only how well they do in their life, but what kind of guy they married and how successful they are. And so a lot of my mom's friends' husbands didn't get as good of an education as my dad did, but they were like higher ups later on in life, which I think was hard at the beginning for my mom, even though now she says she is very glad it turns out this way, because my dad almost never overworked in his company. And I remember as a kid, like our family would always have dinner together, and my parents would always ask me how school was going. I have friends whose parents never asked them how they were doing. They were always talking about their work, but my parents almost always listened to me. And even though this, getting dinner together every day was not something that every family does, actually it's probably really hard to do, because, for example, I would be a doctor later, and I can imagine that I would not be able to have dinner with my family every day. And if you are a policeman, etc., it's just there are so many emergencies that you probably can't spend a lot of time with family. So in that sense, we were super lucky, because my mom still is a teacher, and my dad is an engineer who didn't work a lot of extra hours. So yeah, we can have a very stable family life. And in terms of that, stable family life, we actually moved around a lot, but that was also kind of normal, because back then my parents both worked for like government-owned companies or schools. So as I mentioned in my video, my growing up in China video that I did a long time ago, I mentioned that the district that we lived in, it was basically everybody works in this big company that just produce stuff out of petroleum. And when my parents started to work, there was still a very strong touch of communism, I guess I would say, or collective economy. And what I mean by that is just when they worked there, they also got their apartment from the government, and every 5 years or so, the company would just do a rearrangement of all the apartments. So it's was younger, and then when I was about 10 years old, that was the time that a lot of the state-owned companies became owned by private persons, or so that's the time when my mom also started to invest money in real estate, which doesn't mean that she had the money to invest in a lot of housings. It's just she has always been a person that is not afraid of a lot of hassle, I guess I would say. So that's why she moved us around a lot. But every time we moved, like, we can actually make some money from selling the old house and moving into a new house. Not house, actually more like apartments, but you know. So I remember when I was in 9th grade, so 9th grade was like a kind of important time if you go to school in China, because after the 9th grade you were doing go attend an exam that would decide to which high school you are going to accepted into. And we sold our previous house, but we didn't get the new apartment yet, so that's when our family moved into a one bedroom apartment that was a spare apartment that my aunt, so my mom's younger sister, didn't use. And it was so funny because, like, I remember it was summer, it was super hot in China, but my parents, they always went out for a walk so that I could, study by myself in the room, like, so that they didn't interrupt my studies. And like, that must be a lot for them, because summer in China, especially in my city, it was not funny. Even when the sun goes down, it's still very, very hot. However, I do have to say that they always go for a walk after dinner. Even till now, they have been doing this for probably all this 27 years of their marriage, which is a good thing, because you get some conversation with your partner, and you also get the exercise of the day in. But anyways, so when they are doing their evening walks and I was supposed to study a lot of the time, I was just watching anime and not study. And my mom was very smart. She would attach the back of the TV to see if the TV is hot or not, and then we have measurement to cool down the TV. Like, we would turn on the fan on highest level so that the TV was not so hot. It's just all the things I think is very unique to children's experience growing up in China. It's not like me who did that. It's like almost all my friends have to do this because our parents were pretty strict. And back to their memories of my family. So as I said, my mom is a teacher and she teaches history. She is a very good teacher, and she started work very young, because back then you don't need to go to like college for a long time to become a teacher. She actually only went to college for like 2 years, and then she started work. So you can imagine, when she started work she was like, I think 20 or 21, so very, very young, and she was more like a sister to her students than a teacher figure, I guess. And when she started work, she taught in the 7th till the 9th grade, but very soon she moved to teaching 10th to 12th grade. When she and my dad was still dating, they actually sometimes have to go to discos or to bars just to find sweet, I think. And yeah, and as I said, she is a very good teacher. She's actually on the more poker face end of things. Like, I want to say she was on the stricter side, but she's not exactly strict. She was just usually have a more serious face, but actually, as I mentioned before, she also has a very dry sense of humor, but she's actually pretty funny. And yeah, so that then when my mom was 24, she got me, which was like, yeah, I'm just her only daughter, because there was still, one child policy when I grew up. So it basically means that if my mom would have another child, she would lose her job, because she was, as I said, worked in this state-owned school, which were like, back then, I think at least 90% of the schools, and yeah, so I think that has always been something that she regretted, not being able to have more children, because, like, as I said, my parents had both have very stable jobs, and that would actually be ideal situation to have more children, but she couldn't. And on another end, like, I am actually in a situation that I was never like that. I want to become a mom when I grow up or something. I am actually pretty undecisive on this thing, or I just didn't care that much, I guess. On one side, I think I can imagine have one or two children, but I think it would be very hard to just have enough time for myself later if I do make the decision to have children. On another side, I wouldn't be too sad if I can't have children at all. When I grew older, I just realized that the thinking of I need to get married and I need to have children more like a societal pressure. It's like the society thinks that's the normal thing to do when you're at a certain age, but it's not something that's coming from the bottom of my heart, which is an interesting thing, because obviously I choose to study medicine, and I can imagine working a lot later. I can imagine even working a lot of extra hours shift or whatever to help people, to put it in an easy way. But when thinking about my own children, I just think, wow, that would be so much work, and that would leave me very little freedom. So yeah, anyways, that's out of the topic. Going back to my mom's side, so my grandpa is, I think, exactly 50 years older than me. So he's 76. He has two older brothers and one younger sister, and because his two older brothers are both over 18 now, so somehow I just feel, and I also realized that my grandpa is getting older, which is, a fact, but still it's hard for me to imagine. So basically, he is the grandpa that do that. He's a very talented man. So on my granddad's side, it's actually very interesting. They were like teachers for 10 generation, and actually there was even a documentary from a local TV station about our grandma's side of family that in every generation there is a teacher or several teachers. So in my mom's generation, that person is my mom, but my grandpa is not a teacher. My grandpa is actually, or was, engineer as well. So growing up, like, he did very well in school, and he went to university to study something related to physics. I think it was like a very complicated thing that I never fully understand what did he majored in. But as I said before, it was very, very hard in his time to go to university. And my grandma actually told me 3 years ago, that's something I also didn't know before that, back then. So like when they were younger, so at the beginning of the 1970s or at the end of the 1960s, I would say most women want to marry a man that works in the military, because back then there was a shortage of food, and you not only needed money, but you also needed food stamps to get food. And so a lot of women actually want to marry a military man so that they would secure the food stamps and all the any other benefits. But my grandma has always wanted to marry a man who is well educated, and then she married my grandpa. Yeah, my grandma only finished her 8th grade, then she needed to work to support her side of the families, because she is the oldest girl in the family, and she has like 2 younger brothers and 1 younger sister. So she started, and her dad passed away very early, so she needed to just work to support the family. She always says that she didn't get much education, but actually she's very hardworking person. Like, there was this one memory of her is that my grandma would prepare a lot of dishes for Chinese New Year's, right? So it is a very complicated process, and a lot of the times you need to prepare those food a few days ahead for them to be ready on the eve of Chinese New Year celebration. And so she actually wrote down menus, but because Chinese is such a complicated language and my grandma only finished 8th grade, so she sometimes would make mistakes in her writing. So once I just pointed out to her, grandma, this should be another character you are using, and then she just correct that word, and I was like, oh no, it's no big deal, as long as you understand what you want to cook, you don't have to really correct that character. But she was like, no, yeah, I want to know how to write it correctly. So my grandma actually learned to make jewelry, which is super cool. So she worked in a factory to make jewelry out of jade, which is a type of gemstone that is I think only very popular in China but not in other countries. But I think it's a super cool skill. She didn't actually work in that field for a very long time. It's a very complicated stories, but essentially when she moved with my grandpa, because obviously he is the one who earned more money, and she moved to him, and then they put her in a position that is just a position to deal with paperwork and stuff, and it's a super chill position. And she also only worked till she was like, I think maybe 50 or something, or not even that, and then she retired. So I guess you could say my grandma is more like a homemaker. Yeah, translation from English to Chinese and from Chinese to English, because my grandpa also worked in this German-Chinese joint venture, and he dealt with the whole company's translation. And even when he retired, the company worked with him, so that my grandpa has to start like his own company, and then he worked for a few years more. But because people retire super early in China, at least the stage of now, like women retired at 55 and the men retire at 60, so that I think my grandpa retired at 60, and then he worked a couple of years more, and then when he retired, he actually go to university to study painting, and I guess for him it's always his dream actually to just paint and read and drink tea at home. I guess this ideal of being a very well-educated man in China, back in the old days, that you don't have to work very much. All you do every day, all day long, is just, read books, maybe write poetries, and paint some more, drink tea, and then play guo. So this board game with other people. And when my grandpa retired, he was fully embracing that life, and he and my grandma, they traveled a lot too. So I would say that my grandparents, they enjoyed life more, and they actually didn't mind to spend the money to pamper themselves, whereas my parents are more like on the very how to say it. So my parents, they actually saved their money and they didn't travel a lot. So it's interesting that even though it's my grandparents' generation who went through more poverty, or like my parents who are more careful with money. But anyways, so a few years back, my grandparents actually also visited Russia, which was for them a dream come true, because their generation still grew up in a time that they worshipped Russia because of the whole, communism era and so on and so on. So yeah, and I guess I have always looked up for him a lot, and when I was a baby or when I was a young child, my grandpa would just tell me a lot of the stories, like not like other people who need storybooks to read to children. He actually just memorized so many stories in his mind, and it's just fascinating. And even later, I love reading, but that I didn't get very much from my parents, because especially my mom, she's very strict, and she always wanted me to, spend more time studying, like, properly studying like maths and science subjects, and not spend so much time to read novels, which are like, for my mom, it's like a waste of time. But my grandpa, he has always encouraged me to read more, and I really want to meet them soon, because they are also getting older and having health issues, like not severe health issues, but still. For example, my grandpa told me last weekend that his vision is like having some problems, and I was kind of worried and asked him to go to see an eye doctor to see what the eye doctor says. So let's see. But the good thing is he takes really good care of his body, and if he notices something, he would go to the doctor immediately, which is a good thing. A lot of people in my family are not like that. They only go to doctors if the pain is absolutely unbearable. Like my grandma, so that I should, worry about her more. But yeah, so as I said at the beginning of the video, I'm going to hopefully visit my family at the beginning of 2024 and hopefully spend a lot of time with them, because I would finish my medical school at the end of 2023, so next year, probably in December, I would be done with all my studies. And actually, I imagined that my mom would say that I should get a job directly after that, because she was that kind of hardworking, strict person that she is, But she actually told me, you should take 5 months off if you want. And I was like, Mom, 5 months? Okay, if you say so. Like, I don't know if I would end up doing that, because, could well be that I would get a job and they want me to start as soon as possible or stuff like that if I want the job. So yeah, but still, I definitely want to see my family first before I start work, because not seeing your family for 5 years is just sad at this day and age. All because of the pandemic. It's just a struggle, everything. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video of me rambling about my family, and I will see you in